games, computers, friendship, the Gaz Show.
Yeah, how good's that? Thanks, Hal, for that. So this week I'm doing Dungeon Keeper 2. And this one's a big one. Unfortunately, I just found out about 15 minutes ago that one of the features of my streaming software that I'm using was put behind a paywall at some point in the past week, and the developer told no one. So, yeah, that's a bit annoying. So I'm going to have to get around it a little bit. It's not going to have any major impact, but yeah, I'll be switching over to something different for next time. So here it is, Dungeon Keeper 2. If you want to pick it up on GOG.com, you can get it for, there it is, $8. Not bad. I'm running it in GOG Galaxy, which is GOG's optional launcher. It's really good, and it consolidates your games from other platforms, so you can launch like Steam games through here. Blah blah blah. Anyway, plug for GOG because I'm a GOG fanboy. So here we go. We'll just jump into this. Yes. How good is that? Dungeon Keeper 2. So if you played Dungeon Keeper 1, and you've still got it, try going back to it. It ran in, I think, a maximum of 320 by 280 resolution. So my modern eyes, even my retro gamery eyes, struggle to deal with it. So Dungeon Keeper 2, I think, strikes a nice balance. It still looks, I guess, good today. So yeah, I've gone to this, and I think Dungeon Keeper 2 really refined everything that Dungeon Keeper 1 did well. Dungeon Keeper 3 trailer. So sad. So Dungeon Keeper was the second in a series of 2 games. And let's go into a dungeon I prepared earlier. And Dungeon Keeper, so there was a Dungeon Keeper 3 planned, but Electronic Arts basically disestablished the studio. They shut down Bullfrog, and then they eventually made Dungeon Keeper 3 in about 2014. But it was a mobile game. Made a lot of fans very, very angry that they shut down the studio and then turned this franchise into a crappy mobile game. But this is essentially Dungeon Keeper 2. So this element is My Pet Dungeon. So there is a main storyline with Dungeon Keeper 2. Basically, you're like an evil overlord that runs a dungeon, and you're trying to conquer the realm of the goodly heroes. And when they were developing Dungeon Keeper 2, what they wanted to do is they really wanted to get things, really right.
The battle in the combat pit is over.
Yay, who won? This guy. Well, let's give him some money as a gift, as a reward. There you go. Yeah, he's pretty happy about that. Yes, so what was I saying? So when they were developing Dungeon Keeper 2, they really wanted to refine all the best aspects of Dungeon Keeper 1. So they tested the systems in a type of game mode where there were no enemies. And it was really, really popular. It was basically a sort of low-stress Dungeon Keeper version.
Created in your workshop.
And that became My Pet Dungeon, which is probably the mode that I played the most in Dungeon Keeper 2. Well, there's my Iron Maiden. Oh no. Yeah, they like to torture themselves. So yeah, I've got a prisoner in here starving to death. That was one of my monsters that they annoyed me, so I threw them in the prison. Eventually they'll die and turn into a skeleton. And let's build.
It is payday.
Oh dear. So the game system is basically you build this dungeon. There's all these different little sims. I guess you could call it a combination of a real-time strategy game and a management simulation. No, I did not chuck a sickie. I managed to finish up early. So yeah, it's a combination of management and real-time strategy. And if you're familiar with Bullfrog Productions, they were famous for their management genre. They made Theme Hospital. They made, which was a hospital management simulator. They made the Magic Carpet series. They made Populous. And a lot of these games came from the mind of
door has been created in your workshop.
Peter Molyneux. And Peter Molyneux was the founder of Bullfrog, and sort of a controversial figure, I guess, in the game development scene. He's very much a type of character who was, brilliant creative mind. Created some incredible games, but he wasn't afraid to hype them. And if anyone's played Godus, yes, it's a perfect example of
A wooden door has been created in your workshop.
Without a manager, he tends to get away from himself. So yeah, he's a bit of a controversial character. Peter Molyneux made Dungeon Keeper 1. Don't believe he was involved in Dungeon Keeper 2, but they had his base system to work from. And Bullfrog really were good at management. Even the minor management elements in something like Syndicate, which is a Bullfrog game. Syndicate wasn't a management game, but the elements it did have in there were pretty solid. So as you can see, you've got your little imps running around. They basically do all the works in the dungeon for you. They claim dirt. These unsealed walls are really easy to dig through, so you want your imps to sort of seal them like this. And in here, I'm going to build A dark temple. Now, he's not being quick enough, so I'm just going to give him a little slap. Hurry up. You too. And you. Dungeon Keeper is... holds a really special place in my heart. Probably for a lot of people, really. I remember the first time I encountered the series. I was in Chadstone Shopping Centre. I saw a big poster at whatever EB Games is called. I think Electronics Boutique, before they made their name, you know, so much shorter and I guess so much more marketable.
Your portals have attracted as many creatures as they can.
And there was a big picture of the Horned Reaper from Dungeon Keeper. I've got too many salamanders. Let's sacrifice some.
The gods have accepted your sacrifice. The gods have blessed you with a mistress.
A mistress, that's right. So they enjoy being slapped.
Angels are terrifying entities who join you only for their own amusement and interest.
They're like
powerful
dominatrix type characters.
And amazingly efficient researchers.
And then you've got... so all the characters, you can slap them as a punishment, but the mistresses, they enjoy being slapped. So if you don't slap them, they become unhappy. So in here we've got the lair where the monsters set up their little home, little hatchery, so they can eat the chickens. You can slap chickens as well if you want. Got a training room, got a casino, so I can sort of earn back the money that I pay my monsters. I can rig the casino if I like, but I like to have it pay out because occasionally when a monster wins the jackpot, it plays... there's like a little disco in here. I can't remember what the song is, but yeah, some disco song that will probably get this stream banned for some DRM reason. This room here is the dungeon heart. So this is essentially the core of your dungeon, and if the enemy destroys this, that's the end of things. You can store a certain amount of gold. If you have too much gold, you've got to build these rooms, which are treasuries. There's the torture chamber, mistresses torturing each other. And what else are we going to build? Let's build a graveyard. Oop. Let's build a graveyard. Now in My Pet Dungeon mode, you've got a little toolbox full of heroes. You can set their skill level and then trigger an invasion. Let's do one wave. Use the magic to summon all my monsters here. As you can see, you can sort of pick up your monsters and drop them where they need to be. And I've got enough skeletons, so let's turn off the prison.
Off.
We want the bodies that we can send to the graveyard that will turn into a vampire.
Your creatures are unable to get to a prison.
And one of my favorite aspects of Dungeon Keeper, both 1 and 2, and it's the bit that really got me into it, I think, was... I don't know if you ever played...
demon has become unhappy because it is no lair.
Oh no, this one, is it? No, this one. Alright, let's give him a home. You can live in here. So, probably remember, I remember playing SimCity, things like that, and I remember thinking back then, like, you'd build the city, put heaps of work into it, and you'd sort of think, man, I wish I could explore my city. I want to walk around in the city that I've got, that I've made. Well, Dungeon Keeper 2 and 1 had exactly that. The spell Possession allowed you to possess one of your creatures. it really was like absolute game changer. There's like nothing like being able to walk around your own dungeon. It just heightened that immersion so much and added, I guess, an extra layer of satisfaction in what you were doing. When you do possess a monster, that monster becomes more powerful, and you can sort of gather groups of monsters to follow you and sort of lead them in battle. But it's mostly, I find, just I guess I mainly use it as a little novelty, but an addictive novelty. Now, it does look dated by today's standards. I mean, the polygons are, pretty simple. The view distance isn't great, for example, but it gives that dungeon that dark, mysterious feel with the low view distance. Makes it feel dark. That's enough mining gems for now. Anyway, we've seen my pet dungeon. I'll just go to one of the missions.
Game saved.
Okay, so you might be familiar with that voice that you hear. Probably hear a bit more of him soon. But that voice is a British actor known as Richard Ridings. Richard Ridings, he voiced the mentor in Dungeon Keeper 2. That's the voice that sort of tells you what to do. And he also voiced the mentor in Dungeon Keeper 1 as well. You might recognize his voice, especially if you have children. That voice is Daddy Pig from the children's...
A new species of creature has entered your dungeon.
There you go. That is Daddy Pig from the children's cartoon Peppa Pig. Now, I have my fan theory. I've watched a bit of Peppa Pig because I have children. And it's never really clearly, it's never really clearly shown in Peppa Pig what Daddy Pig actually does.
Dwarves. These righteous little pests may stray onto your land, and if they do, destroy them, for that's what they deserve. A new spell has been researched. Mana is the currency.
Sorry, I'll just let the mentor finish speaking.
Cast a spell. Your mana level is shown in green atop the screen. Your land will gradually renew it as it's spent. Cast your new spell to create an imp. So open now the panel Spells and select the imp's head symbol. Then cast it with a click on any land that's yours. A good cast, Keeper. You've made good use of your warlock's studious research. Your creatures make good progress. One improves his skill to level 2. A creature can train as high as level 4, but that's the limit.
Come on,
Further
finish.
skill can only be attained out on the battlefield.
So, as I was
Your
saying...
imps will call your creatures to defend the dungeon heart. They must make sure of its protection above all other tasks.
So,
the paltry dwarfs
oh
are now
my god, here we go again. Quiet.
Allow your creatures time to rest and eat. When ready, guide them north to find Lord Darius's keep. A left click on your creature picks it up.
He's almost done.
A right click on claimed land then lets it drop. Be wary though. Don't drop them too near enemies, for the dropping stuns these beasts a time and makes them vulnerable to enemy attack. Imps are creatures born of magic and cost mana to sustain. You may wish to train your warlocks to improve their skills. To do this, drop a warlock in the training room.
All right. That was quite the monologue there from Mr. Ridings. Now, Peppa Pig, as I was saying, in that TV show, it's never really clearly, stated what Daddy Pig does for a job. There is an episode where they go to Daddy Pig's work and he sort of just, is on the computer, just looking at graphs and that sort of stuff. But that's about as in-depth to it as they go. So my theory is that Dungeon Keeper and Peppa Pig exist in the same universe, and that the mentor...
A new spell has been researched.
Oh, shush.
Your warlocks now have studied further, offering you another spell to cast, through which a thunderbolt is yours to hurl against such foolish enemies who dare invade your turf. The time has come for you to face Lord Darius. Tag the flashing tiles. Your imps will tunnel to his keep.
So the theory is that Daddy Pig, when he goes to work, is actually acting as an advisor for the evil Dungeon Keeper. His voice acting has always been a highlight of Dungeon Keeper for me. I mean, he just does such a good job at that, like that evil sort of, I guess the tongue-in-cheek evil, you know, moustache twirly, British evil. They really should have employed him to, you know, be like an Imperial officer in Star Wars. He just would have been so good at that sort of role. He really hams it up. Now, so Dungeon Keeper 1 and 2 were released in 1997 and 99 respectively, and there was meant to be a Dungeon Keeper 3 in the early 2000s. That got shut down, thanks to EA, and then they made the mobile game. So basically fans of these old games have been screaming for a sequel for years and years, and it was never going to happen because EA just loves to sit on things and ruin childhoods. I don't know, probably eat babies or something. And then along came a little developer. I can't remember who the developer, who they are, what the name of the developer is.
Lord Darius's walls are breached. Your forces now must kill his guards and stir Lord Darius himself to come defend his land.
But the developer is made up of former Bullfrog devs that worked on Dungeon Keeper. And essentially they said, right, you know what, we're going to make a Dungeon Keeper spiritual successor. And that game came out a couple of years ago. It's called War for the Overworld. And it's about as close as you can get to the original Dungeon Keeper's experience. It even has Richard Ridings back as a mentor for the Dungeon Keeper. So it's usually pretty cheap on Steam. You can pick it up very on a sale for next to nothing. It's also available on GOG, my preferred platform, because it's DRM free. And it's very, very good.
Lord Darius has been roused. He enters through his hero's gate. The access is now his kin, and the portal gem of sin will be yours.
Keeper, dare not think that you will conquer me, you evil wretch. My dwarves and the power of good will drive you from this land.
Yeah, whatever. So yeah, it's very good. War for the Overworld. I definitely recommend it if you want, I guess, some more modern comforts. I guess it looks better. It's got a lot of refined mechanics. There's also a series called Dungeons. I played the first Dungeons game, and that was sort of billed as, you know, inspired by Dungeon Keeper. And personally didn't click for me. But it might have been because I went in really wanting and expecting Dungeon Keeper 3. And it's a little bit different. Sort of more of a cross between Warcraft 3 and Dungeon Keeper. You know, a bit more RTS.
My realm with your foul sorcery. You will perish, Keeper.
But I might have gone in with the wrong mindset, so I am probably going to give it another go.
Lord Darius lies dying. Now comes Horny to claim you the portal gem. Your progress is most pleasing.
So some of the Dungeons games we've given away for free. They do get given away for free every now and then. So if you did manage to pick one of those up, you can check that out. There's also another series that was sort of inspired by Dungeon Keeper, but it's very different. And it's called Overlord. It's Overlord 1 and 2, and I'm not sure about 3. But essentially, it's like a third-person action game, and you're essentially this guy, the Horned Reaper, or you're like a Dungeon Keeper type guy. And you gather, little parties of monsters to help you conquer the overworld. So it's sort of, I guess it's got that sort of Dungeon Keeper-y vibe, You're the evil guy trying to defeat good.
The treasury lets you nunchaku.
Oh, these little movies between missions.
I see you blasted Lord Darius off the face of the realm. A most entertaining way to claim a portal gem. To hear this.
His voiceover is just the absolute highlight. It's so good. So there's the map. I think there's about 20 levels all up. They get progressively harder, add in more mechanics. I don't think I've ever completed the campaign of Dungeon Keeper 1 or 2, because the highlight is, of course, My Pet Dungeon. It's just, you get really just caught up in it. Just playing, just playing the various My Pet Dungeon levels. It's very sort of Zen type gaming, just, refining the perfect dungeon, not having to worry about being, knocked about by another player. There is another game mode as well, a skirmish, and that's essentially you go up against another Dungeon Keeper. I didn't play much of it. I know very little about it. I usually played the campaign or My Pet Dungeon. And then multiplayer replicated the skirmish. So each of these My Pet Dungeons has its own little challenge. This one has a very limited amount of gold, so you've got to be careful about what you spend. So you've got, I guess, enough gold to get you through until you beat the level. Because My Pet Dungeon does have an objective. You've basically got to hit a certain amount of points. Mass 20,000 points. And once you do that, you beat the level. Or you can continue playing if you like. So there's a bunch that you can work through. And if you do get War for the Overworld, it does have Steam Workshop integration, or you can get mods from Nexus. And some absolute legend has gone and recreated the entirety of the My Pet Dungeon levels from Dungeon Keeper 2. So you can play through My Pet Dungeon in this brand new game. It's well worth it.
A new spell has been researched. Cast Thunderbolt to unleash a minor electrical discharge in a deserving location. The workshop is now available to you. This room will allow you to build traps and doors to defend your dungeon.
So yeah, I highly recommend this game. It'll get you sucked in for hours on end, and if you do prefer, some of the modern conveniences, War for the Overworld is equally as good. It's got a whole lot more depth, really. But if you played the original Dungeon Keeper, you might find yourself pining for some of the, original room designs, original graphics. I know I do.
The wooden door is a weak defense, but useful for controlling the movement of your own creatures. You cannot afford to build this room. A new spell has been researched. Possession grants direct control of a minion's mind, so that you may inhabit its body to explore your own dungeon and beyond. The troll is a sturdy worker, and will create traps and doors in the workshop at your command. He also has the ability to spot hidden enemy traps.
There's so much character and all the, even though it is dated now, every single character design is so detailed. They've all got heaps of uniqueness about them. Even though I guess the way they interact with each other, the warlocks sort of, they sort of hole up in the library. Certain monsters don't get along with each other. So, for example, warlocks will not get along with quite a few different creatures, and so you really do, I guess, get a sense of you don't just have a bunch of units walking around your dungeon. You've got personalities. In a way, Dungeon Keeper 2 sort of feels like The Sims in a way, or something like SimCity, but with a whole lot more character and a lot more evil, of course.
A new spell has been researched. The heal spell will fully restore the health of one of your minions.
It's the design. Dungeon Keeper 2.
Salamander has joined you.
Shush.
These reptiles are extremely hot-blooded and will happily wade through lava.
Dungeon Keeper 2 and 1 was sort of made 97 to 99, so right in the peak of sort of the PC gaming golden age, where developers, were not afraid to try sort of new, unique ideas, and this is the sort of stuff we got out of that era. You don't sort of tend to see this level of, I guess, creative risk in a lot of games anymore. It's mostly refined to the indie scene. And War for the Overworld is very much not quite an indie game necessarily. The studio's, I guess, decent size, but it's verging on an indie game. It's definitely a AA game rather than a AAA game. It was a very dark time for a while.
It is
post
payday.
Late 90s.
A guard room. This room will attract in dark elves and allow you to build guard posts in the workshop if you have one. Guard rooms allow you to defend areas that may be prone to attack.
In the post,
You need a treasury to store gold.
in the post 1990s, essentially, development was monopolized by companies like EA and Ubisoft and that sort of thing. And indie development wasn't that big. It really took until game engines like Unity and Unreal Engine became free and easy to use and widely accessible that we saw a huge boom in indie games in the early 2010s. And now you've got this entire sort of indie industry that is really quite skilled and not afraid to try things, because it's just people, I guess, working out of their basements or doing it after work. Great example is Stardew Valley. That was made by one guy over 4 years, and it's made him about 25 million. That's just something that couldn't have been done back in this era. But back in this era, the big developers were not afraid to try new things. So, there's positives and negatives to it all. But I was definitely happy to see something like War for the Overworld. See that indie devs today are sort of picking up some of the great ideas that were established in that golden era.
A new spell has been researched. Sight of Evil allows you to peer into unclaimed and unexplored areas.
I forgot about that. You can move your camera around if you want to have a better look at things, zoom in and zoom out. So much detail. And you might have noticed, I don't know if you can hear it quite well enough, but the sound work is also excellent. The sort of spooky Gregorian chants. And just sort of that, there's like a constant ambient noise. And as you wander deeper into your dungeon, it sort of becomes a little bit quieter and becomes a bit spookier. It's really well done sound work.
A new spell has been researched. Call to arms summons all of your creatures to one particular location.
So that if you want to, do a bit of the hard work yourself, you can, become an imp and chip away at the walls. Anyway, I hope that was a nice little trip down memory lane for some of you, or maybe it's inspired you to try out the game if you've never played it, or maybe try out War for the Overworld if you're looking for something inspired by a Dungeon Keeper. Next week, I haven't decided what I'll be playing. I'll have to sort out whatever's going on with the streaming software. But until then, happy gaming. And I'll see you next week. See you later.